Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. May 19th is one of those dates where civilization keeps trying to look organized while quietly setting fire to the paperwork, the palace gate, the monarchy, and occasionally the sky. Segment 1, and royal marriages with expiration dates. May 19th reminds us that medieval diplomacy was basically dating by committee, except the committee had land claims, church lawyers, and no concern for emotional damage. In 1051, King Henry I of France married Anne of Kiev because the Catholic Church's rules against marrying relatives had made Europe's royal dating pool look like a family reunion with crowns. Anne arrived from the Kievan Rus, highly educated and politically sharp, which must have been unsettling in a court where many nobles treated literacy like witchcraft with better stationery. She secured the Capetian line by giving France Philip I. And with one baby name imported from the East, she helped make Philip sound forever royal. Then, in 1499, Catherine of Aragon and Arthur Tudor were married by proxy, because nothing says sacred union like sending a substitute teenager to stand near a treaty. Arthur died. Catherine later married Henry VIII, and that earlier marriage became the legal tripwire under the English Reformation. And on May 19th, 1536, Anne Boleyn was executed after Henry VIII had broken Europe apart to marry her, then treated the marriage like a subscription he forgot to cancel. Her daughter Elizabeth survived the lethal Tudor circus and became one of England's greatest monarchs. So the lesson is clear. Dynastic marriage promised stability, but mostly delivered lawsuits, schisms, and the occasional head in a storage chest. Segment 2, and empires discover the door swings both ways. Empires love to call conquest integration because it sounds better than saying, "We moved in and rearranged your furniture with cavalry." In 639, after the Tang dynasty defeated the Eastern Turkic Khaganate, it tried absorbing Turkic nobles into the imperial system. On paper, that is sophisticated statecraft. In practice, Ashina Jieshe Shuai, a disgraced Turkic prince, planned to ambush Emperor Taizong at Jiucheng Palace, only for the plot to be ruined by a rainstorm. There's something wonderfully human about a coup being defeated by weather, as if the heavens said, "Your assassination window has been rescheduled." Afterward, the Tang court pushed Turkic populations north as a buffer. Nearly 9 centuries later, Jacques Cartier sailed from France with 3 ships, 110 men, and 2 kidnapped sons of an indigenous leader, because the French translation app in 1535 was apparently hostage with directions. Cartier mapped the St. Lawrence and laid groundwork for New France, but also poisoned relations with kidnapping, mistrust, and imperial confidence. Then, in 1749, King George II granted the Ohio Company a huge charter in territory already claimed and inhabited by others. That speculation helped ignite the French and Indian War, which helped bankrupt Britain, which helped fuel American rebellion. May 19th keeps showing the empire problem. When people become obstacles on your expansion spreadsheet, the spreadsheet eventually develops knives, winter, and tax resistance. Segment 3, and when nature files the audit. History has a way of letting humans build entire systems on wood, weather, and arrogance, then waiting for the bill to arrive. In 1314, the wealthy Baltic trade city of Visby burned after fire tore through wooden houses and warehouses packed with timber, wax, and other materials best described as medieval gasoline with invoices. Visby's commercial success became the accelerant, a painfully direct metaphor. Get rich enough storing flammable goods, and your profit margin becomes a smoke column. The city rebuilt in stone, proving urban planning often begins when somebody finally says, maybe stop making the economy out of kindling. Then, on May 19th, 1780, New England's sky went dark in the middle of the day. Animals panicked. People flooded into churches, and legislators debated whether to adjourn for Judgment Day. Modern science points to Canadian wildfires mixing with fog, but at the time, it felt like God had dimmed the lights to check America's receipts. Abraham Davenport of Connecticut refused to stop working and asked for candles, which is either civic virtue or the most New England response imaginable. Jump to 1845, and Sir John Franklin's expedition left Britain to conquer the Northwest Passage, with steam engines, canned food, heated systems, and nearly 3,000 books, because Victorian explorers believed the Arctic would be impressed by a library. The ships vanished into ice, and the men died of starvation, scurvy, and lead poisoning. Nature does not care about confidence. It burns the city, blacks out the sky, freezes the ship, and waits for historians to find the memo. Segment 4 and Government by Gunpowder and Fine Print. May 19th also shows governments reinventing themselves by declaring the old rules dead, then discovering the new rules still require armed men and terrible paperwork. In 1643, at Rocroi, the young Duke of Enghien led French forces against Spain's legendary tercios, massive infantry formations that had spent generations walking around Europe like the armored customer service desk of empire. The French victory broke the myth of Spanish invincibility and announced that military fashion had changed. Tradition is not a shield when artillery has your address. 6 years later, England declared itself a commonwealth after executing Charles I, abolishing the monarchy and House of Lords like a nation rage-clicking delete account on divine right. European courts reacted with the polite horror of people realizing the servants had found the axe and read political theory. The Republic eventually produced Oliver Cromwell's rule, because even revolutions that hate kings sometimes say, what if we had one guy, but with less jewelry? The Commonwealth's hunger for power helped launch the 1655 invasion of Jamaica, where England turned a failed Caribbean campaign into a captured colony central to sugar wealth and the brutal Atlantic slave system. The retreating Spanish armed formerly enslaved people, helping create the Jamaican Maroons, who resisted British control for generations. Governments love to present themselves as order. Underneath, May 19th keeps finding violence, opportunism, and a constitution written in pencil beside a cannon. Segment 5 and Modern Myths with a Body Count. By the modern era, May 19th gets very good at packaging crisis as spectacle. In 1883, Buffalo Bill Cody opened his Wild West show in Omaha, turning the closing frontier into a touring entertainment brand with stagecoach attacks, sharpshooting, and native performers reenacting a conquest that had shattered their own worlds. It was America selling itself a souvenir version of violence, while the real history was still warm. In 1919, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk landed at Samsun, beginning the Turkish national resistance that led to the modern Republic of Turkey. For Turkey, the date became a founding celebration so powerful, Ataturk later treated May 19th as his symbolic birthday. For Pontic Greeks, the same date is genocide remembrance, a reminder that one nation's origin story can be another people's wound. In 1920, the Matewan Massacre erupted in West Virginia when Baldwin Felts detectives came to evict Union miners and ran into Police Chief Sid Hatfield, Mayor Cavil Testerman, and armed workers who had reached the end of corporate feudalism. The shootout helped ignite the mine wars, proving labor rights were not politely handed over at a conference table with muffins. Then, in 1921, Congress passed the Emergency Quota Act, using outdated census math to restrict immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, because bureaucracy can launder prejudice until it looks like a spreadsheet. By 1962, Marilyn Monroe was singing Happy Birthday to President John F. Kennedy, and American power had learned to wrap scandal, celebrity, money, and myth into one televised breath. In conclusion, May 19th gives us royal marriages that become religious earthquakes, empires that confuse expansion for control, disasters that punish bad assumptions, governments that reinvent themselves with muskets nearby, and modern myths that look glamorous until you follow the smoke. History does not repeat like a copy machine. It repeats like a committee that keeps changing the logo while making the same terrible decision.